Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about property binding. But before we talk about that, I'm just going to explain in a sec what data binding is. Data binding is just sending data from the view template to the class component or from the class component to the view template. So all it is just passing data around. Nothing fancy about that. So we will send data from here to here, and then in the next video, actually in this video, we're going to send data from here, the class component, to the HTML component or the view template. And then in the next video, we'll send data the other way around. And then the video after that, I'll show you how to do two-way data binding, which will be a kind of two-way communication which happens simultaneously. So basically here what you see is a property of name, and we've set it to an empty string. And here on your HTML we have nothing. I'm just going to define an input of type text, and I'm going to add a value, and I'll show you how to send data from this component to HTML. And I will wrap this property, and I'll set the value of this property of value to the value that is within name. So whatever value we have here is going to be whatever the value of this value attribute is. So we'll say name, and we'll go back to the browser, and you'll see that we get nothing because there's an empty string. So we'll go back to the class component, and we will set this value to Onotwa. And if we go back to the browser, you see that that value is in the input field. So we can change this to Michael, and you'll see that it changes to Michael. And what you see, or what really happens there, is every time we change something in our class component, the value gets updated automatically in the HTML. And that's the whole point of binding. And another thing I wanted to mention was that, or something you might ask actually, why can't we just use interpolation for this? Like you could remove these square brackets, and you could add curly brackets or double curly brackets to do interpolation like you did most of the time basically, and that will work. It will work perfectly, except that the reason why you don't want to do that for properties is because you might be dealing with properties that don't accept string values. For example, this disabled attribute, this only takes in Boolean values. If you try to do this, if you try to set it to true, then you'll see that it's going to be disabled, of course, because you said disabled is equal to true. If you try to say false, it's still going to be true. And that's a bummer, because you might want to set this to true. I mean, you might want to set this to false or true or false, and it seems like you can't do that here. But with property binding, it's possible. And the reason why it's possible is because the reason it's possible with property binding and not with interpolation is because interpolation only works with string values. And if you want to work with other different data types, then you will want to use binding. So I'm going to bind this to a property called isDisabled, and we'll define that property in our class component. And I'll set that to true. And of course, it's going to be disabled. Oops, do we have a problem there? Property name does not exist. Oh, okay. Did not. Okay, let me just bring property name back, because I don't want to deal with those errors. And yeah, let's just bring that back, and now we have no issues. But as you can see, it's disabled because we set it to true. But if we set it to false, you'll see that now it is enabled. And that's why you would favor binding over interpolation when it comes to dealing with these types of things, when you're dealing with attributes in HTML elements. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. We can also use it for, okay, let me not delete that. We can also use it for different types of uh, elements, of course, not just this. We can use it for all properties, I mean all attributes of all HTML elements. So yeah, we can use it for classes as well. We could say h1 and we could define a class attribute, and we could set this to my class. We could say my class, and we'll define this property in our component class. We'll say my heading. Let's say my heading because it's one word. Right, and you'll see that, okay, another mistake I made. Hello there. So we could say hello there, and let me just comment this out. Right, and then when I expand the body and I try to locate, okay, let me just locate it like that. So when I try to locate this, you'll see here on h1 on class, you see that there is my class. Why did I bind correctly? Oops, sorry, that's my mistake. I didn't bind. Yeah, but you saw that there was my class, but now we're gonna do some binding, and you'll see that it's going to locate the property from this class component, and you'll see that it's going to show this value instead. And now you see that we have my heading. So we can do it for all sorts of attributes in HTML elements. Now that's all for property binding. I hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for the next lesson on event binding.